Welcome to section 3 of Data Network Security 1. In this session, we'll be talking about injection flaws. At the end of this session, you should be able to explain injection flaws, explain some SQL injections, which is an example of an injection flaw, looked at some actual examples or reference some actual examples. Then I'll direct you to Sakai to actually go and do a hands-on on injection attacks or SQL injection attacks. So let's look at injection flaws. Now, injection flaws has always been one of the most critical web application security vulnerabilities that we have had over the years. And injection flaws such as SQL OS injections occur when some untrusted data is sent to an interpreter in the form of a command or query. And once the attacker gets, or the hacker gets this data, it can trick the interpreter into executing an unintended command, which you have not issued but has been issued by the attacker. The most common example of an injection attack is SQL injection, and hackers have been successful in implementing SQL injection over the years. Now, SQL injection just involves an attacker appending SQL database commands within an input field. Now, assuming you have a web app or a web application with username, you provide a field, then password with a field. Now, an attacker can provide a structured query language, which we are calling SQL commands, in those fields. And once your web application does not filter or sanitize the input, then this SQL command can be executed on your web server. And once that is done, it allows any attacker or a hacker to bypass your network security and therefore having direct interaction with your back-end database. With SQL injection, an attacker is able to return and steal some critical information from your database to the extent of making changes to records and even deleting the entire database. So SQL injection is very critical as far as web application security is concerned. Now, what is this vulnerability? An attacker provides malicious data to an application, and that data is concatenated or is added to the database query. And once that is executed, there is an error. Now, what are the implications of SQL injection or injection flaws in general? We have information leakage, we have total control. The hacker takes total control of your database. The person can insert data, can delete tables, can delete information. Now, the person can also execute commands on your system without your permission. So the person takes total, complete control of your system, your entire system. They can have data extraction from your database. So this is a typical example of a website. Now, Atoro Mutual is a website that we are using as a demo. It's a demo site only. It's not a real life situation. So this is just a demo site. Now, once you go there, all you are seeing are virtual. They are not real life. So you can see online banking login, but this is not tied to a particular bank per se. This is just for demonstration purposes. So once you go to this site, now the first example we want to look at is in the username column. We can just put a colon or a single quote. Now, once the login button is clicked, we have an error. Now, once the error comes up, if your site or your web app is not secured enough, then the error brings out some details concerning your web app. So for this particular example, we have the username and the password. It gives you the structure of that. Now, this gives the hacker an idea as to what to provide to this site. And once the hacker falsifies some username and password, the person bypasses your network. So for example, the person puts in single quotes or 1 equals to 1 with a double dash. Once this is executed, automatically the person has control over your web application. So it says what? Hello admin user. This is an example of an SQL injection, and we will take you through. Once you go to the Sakai, you will have the opportunity to use some of these or experience some of this SQL injection examples. So how do we fix SQL injection? First and foremost, we are talking about input validation. So always at your front end, you need to validate whatever input is going in. So your username and your password. So it's not just plain text, but there are some validations that needs to be done. And as often as possible, accept only good values rather than sanitizing them. So instead of just saying that, okay, you are going to do sanitization later, just accept the right kind of values. Now, never use dynamic queries. Also use parameterized query APIs. And these APIs encodes your user input such that it makes sure that it doesn't break the SQL statement. Now, most importantly, for data tier, which we are saying the back end, make use of store procedures. Now, store procedures have a way of preventing SQL injections because you'll be concatenating arguments or using the exec command within a store procedure, and that can make vulnerability that can prevent vulnerability to a large extent. Also, avoid detailed error messages. Now, for some web application, you want to catch some exceptions, which are errors. Now, in those exceptions, avoid providing details, something like the username and the password. Once an attacker gets that, the attacker can use that against you. Now, enforce least privileges. Watch out for some inputs such that you don't decode before trying to sanitize your system. Now, avoid simple escaping. Okay, so we are talking about simple escaping. For example, string replace functions. Now, avoid all these, and with that, we can be able to fix SQL injection. So like I said earlier on, once you go to the Sakai platform, you have some demo of SQL injection vulnerabilities. So some more examples is the acme.com. So the first one, you see that we have made use of the percentage sign, and per the SQL query, select input employee ID, employee first name, and all that. Once the percentage sign is used, we are able to get results from that. And that's how the attacker used this SQL injection to get into your system. So you look at various sites and various examples which people have used or attackers have used in order to infiltrate into one's system. So exploit and fix SQL injection will be done in lab 1. So visit your Sakai and go through the hands-on exercise. That will help you. So in this session, we've been able to explain what injection flaws are. We've looked at SQL injection in particular. We've also looked at some reference to actual real-life examples using the otoromutual.com. We've also seen some vulnerabilities that are presented using SQL query. So this will end the session for section 3. I'll see you in section 4.